have a very generic title. It should be called better like use cases in supply chain risk management at Evonik. And of course, we have could also have added like Black Swan. So in the title, you will also find a Black Swan within our presentation, and also a lady balancing in between two big boats or even tankers. Anyone has an idea what that could be? Just one guess? Okay, you will see later, so you can be curious what this will be. So yeah, thanks for the introduction again. So my name is Ben Fonfé. I've been working in several roles within Evonik, from R&D, product management, marketing, head of market and data insights, and now in the supply chain area since last summer. And yeah, so I will give you some insights of what I've experienced so far in this time. And this is my colleague Susie from the procurement department.
Hi everyone. So I'm still quite new to Evonik. I joined Evonik in October 2022 and then took over the role in procurement, being manager for risk and compliance topics. And this is also how I came to know Ben from supply chain management, because we have a lot of topics where we collaborate and where our processes have some interfaces. But now giving back to Ben, starting the presentation.
Okay, thank you. So who is Evonik? So Evonik is not only the sponsor of Borussia Dortmund, so we do a little bit more than that. So we are one of the biggest specialty chemistry companies of the world. And yeah, I would say we have a big focus in innovation, but also one core topic is sustainability. And yeah, you can see some examples in which areas we are in, like in detergents. So we have rhamnolipids as biosurfactants. In mobility, future mobility, we have additives and plastic recycling. So I saw also some person from BioNTech. So we also producing lipids that are also used for the COVID-19 vaccine. And we are also in the membrane technology business and many more. So myself, for instance, have been working a lot in the animal nutrition area. So, and with, this is also one of the biggest departments of Evonik. So some number crunching. So we have a turnover around 15 billion euros with a 10% margin, more or less. So we are 33,000 people globally working. And what is important, we have working in many, many countries, and we have colleagues from many, many countries as well. And this, of course, is also important when talking about supply chain and risks, because we are living in an era of risks, and there's different blocks have formed geopolitically, and I will also step into this a little bit deeper later. So this will be not only a generic talk. So after having talked about then giving a short overview of the supply chain risk management at Evonik, we will give you proper use cases. So Susanne will tell us about what we're doing in the field of raw material risk management. Then I will give you an example what we do in terms of risk management in logistics. And finally, I will give you also some thoughts of myself in terms of geopolitical risk management. Okay. So this is like a typical supply chain at Evonik looks like. So we hope to be very customer-centric. And so we have a forecast to produce part of the supply chain and an order to cash part. And in the middle is the production. And within all that of the supply chain, there can occur risks. So for instance, obviously in the forecast to produce process, so there's raw materials play a big role. And Susie and her team, they have developed a risk app, and we will step into that a little bit deeper later. And then we have operational risks. So you all know the topics. Energy supply is a big topic, cyber attacks, force majeures for all sites, storms, etc. And of course, logistics, including the transportation. So we will give you a use case also here. And finally, of course, there's also demand risk. So you also have to watch your customers, not only your suppliers. And definitely, and especially important in the current times are, of course, also the macroeconomic and geopolitical topics that have to be evaluated. And what is it important? How to do that? So you don't have to only collect data, obviously. You have to make the data transparent to your major stakeholders, make them visible. And yeah, how you can do that, of course, also using dashboards. So we'll show you an example today. And yeah, very important is also to have the structures and processes in place on a corporate level, but also on a business line level. Then, yeah, and yeah, we also have had this topic today already. So humans are the most important factor, I would say, and you have to permanently align with the businesses and the major stakeholders from all functions, all businesses, in order to make risk management successful. So without that, you can install as many tools as you want. If you don't do the stakeholder management, you will not be successful. Okay, then I will give the floor to Susie.
Thank you very much. So I'm well equipped now. All right, so I'm talking about our first use case today, which is one of the crucial processes that we have within supply chain risk management at Evonik, namely the raw material risk management process. So why is this one of our core risk processes at Evonik? So first of all, we need this process to first understand, but also anticipate and proactively manage the raw material risks that we have in our company. This helps us to then make informed decisions based on the data that we have at hand, and also helps in strategic alignments, not only within procurement, but beyond procurement, across all our business lines. There are basically our customers that we see as procurement members. Very important is then to decide, do we want to mitigate the risks that we identify, or do we probably want to accept them? So that's always a decision that we have to make collaboratively between procurement and the business lines. Because sometimes we maybe want to accept the risks because the costs to mitigate them are too high. So that's always a decision to be made on an individual basis. And these decisions then also help us to effectively allocate our resources to take care about mitigating those risks that are most business critical for our company. And ultimately, of course, our most important goal is always with this process to ensure supply chain stability across all our operations. And how are we doing this? So most important is always the collaboration between the different departments. So in our case, specifically procurement and the business lines. So that's the human factor all of us have already talked about. So that's always most important, that the people work together. And this collaboration then helps us to comprehensively identify risks based on our risk assessments. I will dive a little bit deeper in what kind of risk assessments we're doing in a minute. And once the risks are identified, we can then mitigate them, and we will also track the risks and the mitigations that we identified. And all of this is based on a continuous and flexible process that we set up in procurement. We have a risk Power App, so it's built on a Microsoft Power App that supports the entire process. All right, so let's first look into how we identify our risks at Evonik. So what kind of strategic insights can we gain so that we discover potential risks, disruptions, and shortages to mitigate them? So first and foremost, we always look at the market. So do we have stable markets? Are they predictable? How complex is our business? So we look at the different business lines. How difficult is it to approve new suppliers for a specific material? Can we approve new materials or new specifications? Or is this something very complex and specific? And of course, we also look at our supplier base. Do we have only one supplier at hand? Do we have several ones? Are our suppliers reliable? But apart from that, we also look at like what kind of business impact do our different materials have to also prioritize. And beyond that, we also look at regional dependencies. Are we more dependent from some countries than from other ones? Are we specifically dependent on specific countries in a specific business line, for example? And we also look at implications from geopolitical conflicts that are ongoing around the entire world, and also implications that may arise from trade conflicts and tariffs. And looking at all these different factors, which we will do based on the risk power app that I will show you in a minute, we anticipate potential shortages that may arise in the future based on these criteria. And this helps us as a solid basis to identify what is really critical and what kind of mitigation measures are necessary to work on these risks. And here you can now see our different risk mitigation strategies. The most important mitigation strategy that we have for our raw materials is to diversify our supplier base. So this helps that we are not only dependent from a single supplier, but also to make our supply chain more resilient in case of any supply disruptions. Apart from that, we're also always looking at alternative materials and specifications if possible. So I would say the first two ones are the ones that we're most looking into when talking about raw material risk mitigation. But apart from that, also other mitigation strategies may apply depending on the use case at hand. So in certain cases, it might make sense to explore alternative value chains or other logistics concepts. So it's always depending on the case, and this is something that is aligned between the procurement colleagues, the strategic buyer that is responsible for the specific product, and on the other hand, the business line representatives. And this is the detailed process that we establish in our company to manage our raw material risks. So the very first step is that we always have a cycle kickoff. There we first always update the data in our risk app, since it's a self-built app. That's something that we're always doing first. It's a synchronization with our SAP data warehouse. Then we also do refresher trainings, and in the kickoff meetings, we set the framework of the specific cycle. Then in the next step, first the strategic buyers, and in the second step, the business line representatives will input the risk assessments into our risk app. Based on that, we come to critical and non-critical cases within the app, and especially in the third step, the risk mitigation app, we look at the critical cases where we have joint workshops between procurement and the business lines, where the critical cases are discussed, aligned on the actual criticality and importance for the business, and then mitigation measures are defined, or it's decided against defining mitigation measures. As already mentioned before, this can also be one of the outcome of this, these kind of meetings. And it's always aligned on a mitigation owner and a supporter. Mainly it's one of procurement and the business line, depending on the use case, who drives these implementation topics. And it's also defined on a planned end date, so that the colleagues are working on these topics specifically within a timeline. And then the last step is the follow-up. We have tracking and reporting measures in place to make sure that mitigation measures are really implemented and not only within the system. And then, of course, from time to time, status updates will be made in the app. And once the measure is completed, this may also lead then to a non-critical rating in the app, which is why we say update of risk assessments. So of course, depending on the case. And this is how, a short sneak peek how our risk app looks like. So we have the assessment, we have the assessments in one tab and the mitigations in a second tab. And we can also jump from assessments to mitigations. We have a lot of different filter options on how to work with the risk app. And in total, we manage about 6,300 different cases, raw material cases in our app. And we coordinate about 540 mitigation measures in this app. This is quite of a flexible and scalable approach because this is a self-built app that can be developed together with our procurement data insights team collaboratively. So this also makes it easy whenever new requests or topics arise, we can quite fast react to these kind of requests. And with this app, we already enabled a partial process automation because most of the process is all the information is already in the app basically. And this makes it also a lot more transparent than it was in the past as you were still working with an Excel file. And this of course also helps to it enhances our data management and also makes analysis way more easier accessible for everyone. Since there is also a Power BI dashboard connected to it where we have real-life visualizations available. Coming from an Excel file in the past, this definitely enhanced the collaboration between the different departments. And let's say that's the first step into an AI-powered process. There's still a way to go, but I would say we're on the right track. And now I would hand back to Ben for the next use case.
Okay, thank you, Susie. Okay, next use case is the logistics risk management. We have also the project leader here in the room called Johannes Geislinger, and later on the roundtable, at the roundtable, you can also ask him questions about this. And okay, good. So yeah, again, like 80% of organization supply chains were disrupted in the last 12 months, and yeah, from 1 to 10 events in average. But the sad thing is that, yeah, many of these organizations have not really learned from these events and would be still vulnerable to new occurring events. And yeah, of course, we at Evonik, we want to avoid that. We want to make our supply chain more resilient, but not only resilient, but even more, we want to make it anti-fragile, as we call it. And yeah, so once the black swan comes in the room, we want to be prepared, right? And yeah, that's why we have started with the project called Lighthouse. So we want to monitor all our shipments and also tag them if there is a risk occurring. And we also want to then be able to, let's say, see that in time in order that we still have the chance to mitigate these events and then to get an anti-fragile supply chain. And our partner for that, so the software tool, and they have already several use cases, is Shipeo. So yeah, and so they guarantee that we can visualize all shipments and tag them with, let's say, with events if they are occurring. And with the tool, we can also calculate or estimate the time of arrival, called ETA. And yeah, so also what is possible to then get an information for each shipment of the CO2 footprint, exact on real shipment data. Yeah, so the ETA is based on machine learning, and yeah, in the future there should be also AI integrated in the tool in order to yeah, even get warnings earlier and get proposals or be able to mitigate these disruptions earlier. Okay, and this is basically how the tool looked like. So here you have, for instance, the Canada port strike. So with the tag and your specific orders. So with Shipeo as a partner, we can identify risks. We can identify the impacted shipments, and yeah, we can get a very precise information about the ETA. And with all that, yeah, we can be more efficient and also be more reliant for our customers, and the customers are always in the center, obviously. So last but not least, so I hope you're still curious and waiting for something. Yes. So this is the pink lady, or at least the pink suitcase. And so we are a multinational company that is based in Europe, right? And we come from an era of globalization. We are now more in an era of deglobalization, and we are in between these two tankers, China and France, and US and France. And somehow we have to, we want to keep our business in China. And of course, we also want to be friends with US and now with Trump in order to somehow, maintain our, let's say, market share, right? But it's getting more and more difficult. You know the examples, like what happened in 2008. The new tariffs with Trump were installed, and of course also the COVID-19 did not help, and the boats or the tankers got even bigger. So today, you really, and also with Donald Trump now being a president again, you really have to be a gymnast to tackle these two boats, right? And if you're, want to stay in the USA and France boat, you have also to evaluate opportunities for your supply chain outside of China. But on the other hand, it's hard, but you also have to somehow adapt to the China rules. You know that there's several risks involved for your reputation, and also when there's disruption of supply chain. And so how to handle this? So I found this very nice evaluation by Moody's. So they are a rating agency, but they also provide risk management software tools. And they are basically counting from the media certain events, risk events, and then they do it per country, and then you can already see if you want to decide on. I have 2 more minutes, okay? So you can see that there's differences, obviously. So in China, there's a lot of modern slavery, while in many other countries, of course, at least in the media, you can find a lot of business crimes. You name some examples. They occur everywhere, but there's differences. And if you want to find or build your new supply chain, this is a first good step to see what risk you can expect in certain countries. And so what we did at Evonik, I think we a little bit shifted more to the US and France boat. So in the recent years, so we have in general made the region stronger. So both in Asia, but also in the US. But in the US, we also invested a lot, like from innovation hub, but also production increase. So you have here some examples of what we did in the recent years. And but of course we should not forget Europe. And I found this very nice report by Draghi from the last fall, and he really made a very, let's say, very good evaluation of the situation. And these are basically the 3 major points that we all work on, basically. So US and China have really built an innovation, or they have an innovation advantage, like in AI or batteries, and we should try to close this gap. We still in Europe have like a certain advantage when it comes to global decarbonization technology, and we should try to really keep this advantage in the recent years, and also make the world function that this technology is needed, and we don't step backwards, let's say it. And we have to work on trying to reduce dependencies towards China and the US, and we need also trading agreements with resource-rich countries, and we have to secure our supply chain of key technologies. And I want to end our presentation with this, I find, very nice citation yeah, we should abandon the illusion that only procrastination can preserve consensus. Without action, we will have to either compromise our welfare, our environment, or our freedom. Yeah, thank you very much for your attention, and we